Mini LED tech keeps marching into lower price brackets, and 2025 gives us two models that promise flagship tricks without flagship prices: the Hisense U65QF and the TCL QM6K. Last year's Hisense U6N was the only budget pick to have a local dimming feature, which made it the best choice in its price bracket. But this year, Hisense has some competition, as TCL's QM6K also has a local dimming feature, with 312 dimming zones on its 75-inch model. Hisense isn't just laying down for the count though, as the U65QF boasts 320 zones on its 65-inch model. Overall, their spec sheet looks very similar, but when you actually use them side by side, the difference becomes much more obvious. Hey, I'm Marco from Ratings.com, and frankly, I'm just confused as you are about these two models. Can it be any tighter? Let's figure it out together. Normally, we talk about some of their design differences first, but these TVs are seriously similar. Both have narrow bezels and two sets of feet, although only the TCLs are adjustable. The Hisense runs on Fire TV, the TCL on Google TV, and they offer the same port setup. Two HDMI 2.1 ports, two HDMI 2.0s, with eARC running through one of the 2.0 inputs. But yeah, not much to excite us here. One thing that does excite us, however, is talking about HDR brightness. We know you love it too, so how do these models fare here? This is where these sets first part company. In filmmaker mode, with local dimming maxed, a peak 10% HDR window hits 887 nits on the Hisense and 698 nits on the TCL. That's a big difference. A peak 25% window measures 866 nits on the U65QF and 890 nits on the QM6K. This may seem like a win for TCL at first glance, but the TCL can't sustain it. It quickly drops to 752 nits while the Hisense loses only 10 nits in comparison. Hisense's edge is even more stark in real content, as here it's much brighter than the TCL, especially in our landscape pool shot. Overall, the Hisense is definitely the brighter set in HDR, and this is true even in game mode. Unfortunately, Hisense's edge in brightness comes at a cost. Its HDR brightness accuracy is quite poor. Everything is displayed brighter than intended, so it doesn't respect the content creator's intent at all. It tracks the PQ EOTF curve much more closely with a standardized 10% window, but that isn't indicative of real-world usage. After all, highlights rarely take up exactly 10% of the screen. The TCL, though, much more accurate. At first, all mastered content is a bit too dark, and then slightly too bright, but overall, it follows the curve very closely. There's no contest here. The TCL QM6K is vastly more accurate when it comes to HDR brightness. What does this all mean? Well, the nice thing about this is that it's pretty clear-cut. If you care more about sheer punch than how accurate the shadows, midtones, and highlights are, the Hisense wins. Smaller highlights are noticeably brighter on it, and it's more likely to impress your friends when they drop by to check out your new TV. But if you care about the content creator's intent, and you're more invested in your movies looking mostly as they should instead of being over-brightened, go for the TCL. Enough about HDR brightness. Let's tackle the most important factor in image quality: contrast. Here, the roles are reversed. The TCL wins. Without dimming, it sits around 6,500 to 1, while the Hisense is around 5,300 to 1. Switch the engines on, and by that we mean the local dimming, and TCL's edge widens even more, hitting an effective 118,000 to 1 contrast, while the Hisense lingers behind at 87,000. Still pretty good contrast for sure, just not as good as the QM6K. And when it comes to how good the local dimming feature is, they trade blows. The Hisense is a bit more precise with less blooming around bright highlights or subtitles. On the other hand, the QM6K dims more aggressively per zone and flips pixels off a beat faster. Halos are slightly smaller, and there's less leading edge trailing. The TCL definitely has the better black levels overall, even if it's not a complete beatdown. When it comes to SDR brightness, the Hisense posts 559 nits average real scene brightness in SDR. TCL lands at 429 nits. That's a big difference. Sports fields, news anchors, shirts, and cartoon whites all look more vibrant on the Hisense, and this is especially noticeable when the curtains are open. Both sets are kind of bad at dealing with direct sources of light, but the Hisense is less bad. In turn, the QM6K is a bit more capable when glare hits it at angles. Frankly, neither TV really excels with reflections, which emphasizes how much brighter the U65QF is in SDR. Color volume typically benefits from having a higher brightness ceiling, and this is true here. The Hisense U65QF is a bit more colorful in HDR than the TCL QM6K, as it's more capable of pushing more vibrant colors across the board. But it once again comes to the cost of accuracy. The U65QF's blues are overrepresented in most shades of gray, while reds are instead underrepresented. The result? The TV's color temperature is way too cold. That's a bummer, as its colors are still somewhat accurate overall, even though warmer colors are undersaturated and have a fair amount of tone mapping errors. The TCL, for its part, is way more accurate. Its color temperature is almost on point even if blues are overrepresented in brighter grays. Otherwise, the TV's color accuracy is excellent, even if some colors like blues, reds, and magentas deviate from what they should be. What about SDR? The Hisense is again more colorful here, though that only matters if you're someone who likes to push your TVs into a wider color range. Both models, like most TVs, fully cover the standard BT709 color space. It's when you push the TVs into DCI-P3 or BT2020 that you start to see the Hisense's muscles push through. But here, surprise! It's the Hisense that is the most accurate TV of the two. Now, hey, they're both accurate, but the U65QF goes the extra mile, mostly due to its outstanding white balance and very accurate colors. That's not to say it's perfect. Reds are underrepresented in most grays, which does make the TV's color temperature a bit too cold out of the box. But it's better than the TCL, as that TV's white balance is mediocre in SDR. Reds, and especially blues, are overrepresented in most grays, with greens still being slightly underrepresented. Still, the nice thing about having too many blues and reds at the same time is that the TV's color temperature ends up being mostly on target. So far, it looks like the TCL might be the best TV of the two for purists, and the Hisense is the TV for those who don't care too much about accuracy, even if it's more accurate in SDR, and just want to have a vibrant image. But image processing throws a wrench into that conclusion. Why? Because the Hisense has the better image processing of the two, and it's noticeable. When you play a heavily compressed stream from a low bandwidth service, the QM6K removes a decent chunk of blockiness, sure, but the U65QF removes even more of it. Both TVs lose some detail in the process, but there's just less macro blocking on the Hisense. The difference is even bigger when it comes to upscaling, as the Hisense is visibly sharper when dealing with low resolution content. The TCL does an alright job, but the resulting image looks muddier. At least they're equally as good when it comes to cleaning up gradients, which means they're both just okay. On the TCL, bright reds alongside all blues are mostly free of noticeable banding. On the Hisense, it's light grays, reds, and blues. All other color gradients on both models have some visible banding. But overall, the Hisense is the better performer here, which muddies the picture a little bit. One area that is not muddy, however, is gaming performance. Specs first. Both TVs accept 4K at 144Hz with HDMI 4 VRR, FreeSync Premium, and G-Sync compatibility. TCL also advertises 1080p at 288Hz game accelerator mode that works by dropping vertical resolution, and guess what? It works great! Input lag on the QM6K clocks at 4.7 milliseconds for 4K at 144Hz, 5.5 milliseconds for 4K at 120Hz, and a very low 3.1 milliseconds at 288Hz. The Hisense also supports 144Hz at 4K, with an input lag of 4.9 milliseconds. That's quite good, but it can't match the TCL's numbers at 288Hz. There's no doubt that hardcore gamers will get more out of the QM6K here, and not just because of input lag. The TCL also has way faster pixel transition times than the Hisense, especially at their respective max refresh rates, which is an important factor for PC gamers. At 120Hz, it's a bit closer, although the TCL still has the edge. At 60Hz, however, the Hisense is a bit better, which is important for console gaming. That's close, but the price to performance ratio still favors the TCL QM6K. With the Hisense, you get extra luminance, a wider color envelope, and slightly sharper low resolution and low bitrate streaming. TCL counters with generally better factory calibration, better black levels, and a snappier gaming experience, except perhaps at 60Hz. So which one should you buy? This is tough. choose the Hisense U65QF if you watch lots of daytime content or like your HDR movies searingly bright. Its higher luminance and wider color palette leap off the screen in well-lit rooms, and its processing keeps low-quality streams sharper. Pick the TCL QM6K if you binge movies in a dim room, value low input lag and crisp motion for gaming, especially if you're a PC gamer, or want color accuracy you can trust right out of the box. Its deeper blacks and slightly cleaner tone mapping make darkroom viewing a treat, and it costs a bit less. If you were to force us in a corner, we might lean a little towards the QM6K, simply because it offers a bit more for gamers, is more accurate, and most importantly, is typically sold for a bit less. These TVs are so close in performance that price is really the deciding factor. But ultimately, the choice is yours. Pick the type of viewing experience that you prefer and go for it. That's it for a comparison of the Hisense U65QF and the TCL's QM6K. Which one would you pick and why? Do you care about image accuracy or are you all about that razzle and dazzle? Let us know in the comments, and until next time, I'm Marco from RTINGS.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs. Mini LED techs keep... that starts off well. Hell yeah. Believe in yourself. Believe. Mini LED tech keeps marching and